Daniel Ricciardo has been put on the hot seat yet again after Marko's latest statement regarding the future of the Racing Bulls lineup, as comments from the Aussie as well as Christian Horner followed immediately. But with Ricciardo being shown the real picture of the Racing Bulls environment, as well as Horner's increased influence over the big project stuff in Red Bull, could we see Ricciardo in his last season in the sport? And is it finally time to promote Lawson? It goes without saying that Liam Lawson is one of the greatest talents that is waiting on the sidelines to be promoted to F1. However, slowly but surely his time is running out due to the narrowed options in the team that groomed him to this level, Red Bull. Ricciardo's influence in Racing Bulls is evident in both experience and marketing value, but that was recently denied by helmet Marko, who went on to drop a bombshell about the future of the Aussie, saying, "The shareholders have made it clear that this is a junior team and we have to operate accordingly. The goal was that with exceptional performances, Ricciardo would be in the frame for Red Bull Racing. That seat now belongs to Perez, so the plan for Ricciardo to replace him is void. You have to put a young driver there soon. That would be Liam Lawson." Obviously, this is as serious as it gets, and whether we like it or not, Ricciardo's value in Racing Bulls is now falling towards the experience itself. Sure, he outscored Tsunoda in Austria in both the qualifying and the main event, finishing P9 and edging closer to the P5 spot of Aston Martin, but one bird doesn't bring the sport to the porch, and it seems like Racing Bulls want to get back to their old ways when they were known for producing the greatest F1 talent, when they were known as Toro Rosso, people like Vettel, Verstappen and Ricciardo himself. The fact that Verstappen's future with Red Bull isn't certain, despite all of the positive talk that's been going on from his side, with the CEO of Mercedes flirting with the idea to sign Verstappen to a long-term deal whenever that would be possible, starting from 2026, Red Bull understands that they need a strong young driver in order to cover any potential move from Verstappen to another team. Obviously, it would take some time to groom a driver like Lawson to be nearly as good as Verstappen, because we've seen that it's the Dutchman who is able to extract all of the performance from the RB20 and not the car itself, if we are to compare where Perez finishes on average in 2024. Ricciardo hasn't remained shy of these critics, and as always, he's had something extra to say about Marko's opinion on him being sacked for a younger driver. The Aussie didn't hide the fact that he wasn't good enough to fight for the Red Bull seat amid Perez struggles. However, many experts argued that at this point of the Austrian team's existence, they would have been much better had it been Ricciardo instead of Perez who would score points as the second driver in Red Bull. Elaborating on his future with the team, Ricciardo said, "I've become really good at not reading things. I actually didn't know about the shareholders' opinion until I was told when I got here. I didn't feel one way or another about it. I still know that the overriding thing in this sport is performance, and that's it. That is what will give me my best chance of staying here. I know that. It's not going to be my smile or anything else. It's the on-track stuff. I've obviously got a good opportunity. Obviously, I say until the summer break. I don't think that is a deadline, but that is obviously where you look at for the first half of the season. There is no doubt a lot of pressure on Ricciardo to deliver extraordinary performance in order to be considered as the replacement for Perez. However, it's worth noting that the struggles of the Mexican driver have opened up the door for a potential replacement in 2025. The bad news for Ricciardo, however, is that he's very unlikely to be considered as one, given the fact that the grid is now more compacted than ever, and if it's not for Verstappen, Red Bull would easily be back in the midfield and struggling for podiums the same way they did during the Mercedes reign. All of this has been closely monitored by Christian Horner, who has a lot of say as to who races where, especially when Ricciardo was brought back as a replacement for Nick de Vries. The tyre test that the Aussie did last year at Silverstone was more than enough to put him in the AlphaTauri seat, with a lot of hope that he could get next to Verstappen, play the ultimate teammate game and get what he deserves the most, retire with the team that started it all for him. Be that as it may, this is something something that Red Bull might have resorted away from, and when talking about it to a greater extent, Horner shared his opinion about Ricciardo's tenure with Red Bull, further adding, "I think anything regarding the drivers are going to be dealt with in-house before we talk to the media about it. They are all Red Bull drivers and every one of them knows that there is always a pressure, that there is always a scrutiny, but Daniel is in the seat and it's down to him to make the most of that, and then it's always, as we've seen in Formula One, things are always fluid." All of the drama in Red Bull has seen Horner take away a bit more power than usual, with drivers like Perez and Ricciardo believed to have taken the Brits' side rather than the Verstappen Marko clan, meaning that they would have some sort of protection if all hell breaks loose. This is one of the primary reasons why the experts believe Perez got the contract extension, even though Red Bull have effectively signed themselves up for a competitive fight in the Constructors' Championship, with the lead being nowhere near as big as it was in the past 2 years. However, at a certain point, results would have to arrive, and if Ricciardo doesn't deliver the way he's expected and bring racing balls back into the midfield, along with the help of Tsunoda, then it's evident that he won't be nearly as desired as he was back in the day. The difference to Tsunoda has been narrowed down, and even though it sounds paradoxical at this point, but the behaviour of the Japanese driver has improved a lot thanks to the mentorship of Ricciardo. Even though he wasn't happy with the car in the beginning, it was thanks to Ricciardo's input on how the VCarb 01 should have behaved that helped Tsunoda have such a strong start to the season and stick in the top 10 drivers on the grid, which is often overlooked if you were to take a slight look at the Drivers' Championship. Regardless, this doesn't mean that a driver like Lawson does not deserve a seat in the sport, and the Kiwi driver himself said that he expects to be called sooner rather than later, because if it's not for the Austrian team, which he highly prefers, then he would be forced to look for a team elsewhere. As of now, a legitimate candidate has arisen in Audi, as they would use the force of a young driver who wants to prove himself, along with the veteran presence of Hülkenberg, and with Sainz taking a bit too long to decide where he'll drive next, it's not that far-fetched of a scenario either. When talking about his future beyond Red Bull and how he wouldn't have an issue in signing with another squad, Lawson said, "At the moment, I don't really know where I slot into the silly season, and I would love to be with Red Bull in F1. They are the strongest one at the moment, and I've been with them now in my 6th year. If I could choose, I would love to be with Red Bull, but obviously if there is no seat there, my goal is F1, so that could be anywhere." Helmut Marko has previously sparked talks about how the wishes of Lawson are primarily coming from his manager, who is fueling talks to media from New Zealand, and nothing from that will come to reality, given the fact it's the team at the end of the day that decides about who races where. However, Marko's latest statement is something that needs to be thought about very carefully and looked at deeply when it comes to the future of Racing Bulls. Whether or not Ricciardo slots in their future, time and results will tell, as it's almost certain that he's picked up the pace as shown in Austria and started to show flashes of what we want to see from him, scoring constant points and keeping the gap to Aston Martin to a catchable size if Tsunoda has a bad race that could be affected by his tantrum. As for Lawson, it would definitely be a massive loss for Red Bull to let go of his talents just because they want to hold on to the marketing value that has been given to them thanks to the Aussies' experience in the sport. But at a certain point, one couldn't help but wonder, where does this thing end? With all of this in mind, what do you think about the future in Racing Bulls? And more precisely, do you think that Ricciardo should be replaced by Lawson as early as in the middle of 2024? Let us know down in the comments below what you think. And once you've done that, have a look at the video that's appearing on your screen right now.